of
our work. Totally.
Yeah. All right. Okay.
Ta-da!
Yay. I did my best to wear my most embodied, sensual, whatever to show up.
Yeah.
Doing my little thing.
Amazing.
But yeah, thank you so much for your time. How has your podcast interview quest been going?
It's going good. I had one I was supposed to be on yesterday that my headphones weren't working.
Okay.
Like the same kind of adventure. So this is just funny to me at this point in time. It's what's this about?
Exactly. Where is Mercury? What's going on?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, sweet. Yeah, I just want to open up the space for you to introduce yourself and the uniqueness that you bring to my audience, if you'd like to go for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So my name is Reva Wild, and I'm an erotic embodiment facilitator and sacred sexuality coach. And my mission and my purpose and my medicine is in connecting mostly women, but I also do work with other gendered beings with connecting to that erotic that we've all come from. We've all come from sex, yet we're not allowed to talk about sex. I'm not even allowed to write sex on Facebook without the bots making sure that no one can see my posts. I need to write sex with emojis and dots and squiggles and things because there's so much shame around our bodies, around sexuality. So my purpose is to make that accessible for us, that life force, that power, that medicine that's in our life accessible, so that we can attract the relationship we're really wanting. So that when we're in relationships we're really wanting, but there's struggles or tensions or the human complexities that happen for everyone, that we can find really sexy ways to lean into each other and create the relationship that we want.
Yes. Thank you so much for that little intro, and we'll go deeper into some of those facets through the course of this conversation. You have about an hour, correct, of space available? All right. Yes. And then, before we go any further, I just want to drop into gratitude and intention setting. May whatever comes out in this session go forth to serve whoever needs to hear it. I figure if just one person gets one little spark of joy or resonance or understanding, or that sense of oh, I'm not alone in what I'm going through, then I've done my job in kind of facilitating and sharing these conversations. So I want that to just be in service to that intention. And again, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having
me. Yay! Yeah, and beautiful. I know this one sexual educator, she recently got her Instagram page with over 20,000 followers or something like that pulled for talking about sex. I'm assuming, as you're bringing up how you have to navigate around essentially censorship. So I'm interested in hearing more about that. How do you personally move through that resistance or that sense of oh, society doesn't want me to be even sharing what I'm sharing, and then what do you do about it, internally and then externally?
Yeah, well, the biggest piece that comes down to is cultural shame. And this is something that every woman and probably every person has experienced around sexuality. And once again, I'll probably say this 1,000 times, we came from sex. Yeah. This is literally what makes babies. Arguably, it's also literally what makes food. Ooh. What makes trees and plants, that same kind of energy of exchange that happens in our erotic systems when babies are made is the same as pollen entering kind of the new stem cells that creates more, not stem cells, but the stems of plants that creates more flowers, that creates more food. And then trees and plants and minerals of the earth, those are all used to create everything we interact with, our clothing. Everything came from this energy that is sex. Yet between kind of the patriarchal kind of church coming in different ways and in different levels, kind of taking over the old goddess cults and the old kind of matriarchal family systems systems that a lot of different communities and our nomadic humanness, like we're talking like 4,000 to 6,000 years ago, like a lot of us were really nomadic in our kind of like following of food, being deeply ingrained in our relationship with the earth and the seasons, and like hunting, fishing, gathering. All of this was a deep part of our experience of being alive. So we were in deep connection with that. But as time did what time did, and agriculture came in, and then suddenly there was this surplus that we could protect, those that were in the bodies that could control the protection of life, of food, started to gain power, and that was men in male bodies. So there's been that kind of beginning of this power over, power under, of this disconnection from sexuality, of this also recognition that like women and like beings that have like vulvas and that can birth life have deep power, deep power in this experience of, yeah, just like that, like erotic life force that moves through us, that at some point in time in our lives, every single woman has felt that spark, even if it was just for a moment. Some of us have been able to play a little more juicily in that, but like that, there's so much life that comes through us and it's powerful. Yet a system that wants to keep this kind of like capitalistic patriarchal structure doesn't want us deeply in our power. So anything related to like the feminine, so the earth, bodies, the mystery, like not knowing, sensuality, that kind of deeper connection with our feelings and our thoughts. All of those pieces have become this kind of like pool of shame for so many of us. And that's where so much of that censorship is now coming from, is this recognition that this energy is powerful. And if people felt sexy and juicy and had all the food they needed and were just like loving life, like we probably wouldn't be engaging in the systems of behavior that we are right now. We wouldn't be investing in all of these products to try to make us feel better about our bodies, because we would understand that like all of our bodies are different. And almost every single body that I've ever met in the world was a little bit squishy somewhere. Like our organs are. Like all of us have squishiness.
Like we're made of water. Like how are we not going to be like juicy, squishy, you know? Like we're not going to be dry and crunchy. I know that. unless we want to. Freak your feel.
Yeah. And to lean into that space of deeper love for our bodies, for the feminine, for, yeah, like this like adventure suit is one of the words that I use with my clients, that we get to live in and express our soul and life force. Like that's powerful.
I really like that. You tend to use words that I really resonate with. Adventure suit is a new one that I like. Also, I find you saying like aliveness, like kind of getting at that like spark, that life force energy, but specifically that enlivens, like it's doing something, it's moving, like how are you playing with that? And then at the same time, it like, I would say it lets someone connect with that spark. Even if they're still feeling shame around their sexuality, they can be like, oh, I am alive. Okay, let's start there. Go from there, unravel that. And also, I just want to commend you on kind of like summarizing thousands of years of programming into like 5 minutes. Like I did not miss that. Thank you so much.
Totally. And it's something that like I've gone in depth into like those past 10,000-ish years of humanity and like where we are now. And there's this like interesting theme or thread of that kind of like power over power under structure coming in, that also created this sense of there being kind of like external authorities, like those in power are the authority. And they also create the external standards, like the list of things that mean I'm good enough, which then started creating this good, bad, right, wrong story that we then internalize into, there's something wrong with me. I'm not good enough. I have not found a single culture that is like kind of like modern or mainstream. I don't know much about different indigenous communities around the world, or I haven't quite seen this flavor in those that are really connected with their roots there. But there's this like fundamental global story that's been happening for probably a couple thousand years now of, there's something wrong with me. I'm the problem. I'm the one that's struggling. It's like this kind of perpetual sense of, I don't have power, I'm powerless, and I am just like at the woes and throes of the world. My body isn't enough. My personality isn't enough. My work isn't enough. My intelligence isn't. I struggle with those stories to different capacities, from that kind of like fundamental sense of like, I'm wrong and I might continue to be wrong and in the bad place, but I want to be good and great. But then we keep trying to climb up this good ladder and there's no end to it, and you always feel like you're bad.
Exactly, especially if you're basing that on external things that are like changing with like the new trends, keep up with it, like rat racing cheese type of thing, you know. And it's like, no thanks. I lately I'm just like, I'll just be the bad one. Sure, go for it. I'm bad. You know, like the good treadmill is not as fun. I'll dive into the shadow. And this theme of unworthiness has been coming up in my own internal reflection and in the people who I've been talking to, mostly coaches. I'm like, what is holding people back? Like, what's really going on? And like, we've been kind of like collectively touching on this chunk of unworthiness. And I have like such compassion for that space, given that I've gone through it myself. At the same time, I'm so over it, you know. And like, people can do what they want. They're so free to stay in that unworthy space, but I'm super inspired to blast out of there and like help anyone else that would want to blast out of there, because like, in short, it's more fun and thinking you're worthy of the juicy goodness of life that can exist and is waiting on anyone that would want to receive that. I would say, especially as more like working with that feminine energy of receptivity and then feeling worthy of receiving that.
And like some of the mindset pieces that like I work with that kind of like fit into that is where kind of like the old story, we'll just call it the old story for now, that we've been working with, that all of us kind of work with, this not enough story. There's this kind of like external authority and external standard that gets to decide whether I'm good or bad. And to shift that entirely and to be like, okay, what if good and bad doesn't exist? What if I'm not a good girl or a bad girl, and that entire story was created just to control me, and I'm just like, okay, fuck that. What happens? And one of the pieces that's really powerful is this invitation that instead of like, there's something wrong and bad and broken innately about, because that story, like when we have the story that like, I am innately broken, there's no way to actually quote unquote fix that or change that or transform that. There's no connection with the agency. But alchemizing that story into, I'm a learner. And sometimes I will make decisions that align me with what I'm deeply wanting. And like, I'll get to experience joy and pleasure and connection and life and creation. And I enjoy that. Like, my body really enjoys that experience. And also sometimes I'll make decisions, and or there'll be like the collective decision making that's been happening from kind of that old story that'll impact me. And maybe I won't enjoy it as much, but it doesn't mean that I'm bad or right or wrong or good. And there can be a deeper acceptance of these pieces of life that have been more challenging for us to hold, like not knowing. Humans really struggle with that, even though you have no idea what I'm going to say next. And we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. We have this huge struggle with the unknown. So not knowing, with destruction, when things fall apart, when things get disintegrated, in different relationships or parts of our lives, or things that we thought were so certain when those release. And also death. Like these are all parts of our experience of being alive.
Yes.
And instead of playing like the right, wrong, blame, shame, judgment, guilt game, we can play a game of desire and acceptance.
Yes.
And it doesn't mean that old parts of us might not come up and be like, oh my gosh, shame. No, we're not supposed to. This will be bad. And then we'll never get our dreams and we'll be rejected from it forever. No, bad.
Ever. Have you seen the Game of Thrones scene with like the shame bell?
Shame. Dong, 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 shame. Like that was like the meme for that part of us.
That is my version of the meme. It's like, get out of here. I'm walking. I'm strutting.
Yeah. But to also like integrate the part of us that has been taught this shame story. Because something that we often do in our cultures is also we try to like push away what we don't want. Just be like, see ya, I'm going in the other direction, which is powerful. That's a powerful decision point to play with. But something that's also necessary in the journey is to go back and have conversations with that part of you that was saying you're bad and you're wrong and you're never going to receive what you want. So you should just hide at home and you should never do this thing or go for that job or flirt with that person. But when you talk to that part of you and you're like, hey, what are you caring about? Like, I can hear that you're kind of being an asshole right now.
Yeah.
But why? Why? What are you wanting? What are you caring for? What are you protecting? I come from kind of like the internal family systems therapy model of every voice in me, every part of me cares about me in some way, even if they've learned really shitty mechanisms to try to do that. So when I ask underneath shame, like, what is she caring for? And when I was going through this deep internal kind of like inventory and dialogue, I was realizing that shame was trying to protect me from rejection. Because when we look at what shame is this like emotional, visceral sense in the body of like wrong, badness. But it comes from this sense of I'm doing something that's against kind of like the social story and the social authority of what's right or good. This is why we'll get shame when we're trying to connect with sexuality, because there's just like so many different loads of flavors. Like there's like all 52 Baskin Robbins like ice cream flavors of shame and times that by 1,000. That's why when we're like putting on our cute booty shorts, we're kind of like, oh no, this is showing too much, or I'm too fat to wear this, or oh my gosh, can they see the fact that like the back of my knees have a little bump just right there? Oh my God, I can't do that.
And then it's like, what will my parents think, and what will they? And, you know, it gets all like externalized out from the internal shaming self. For me, at least, you know, I'm like, oh no, my boobs and the.
Yeah. And also depending on what cultures we've come from and experienced, like there could be like serious threat out there.
Oh my gosh, right? Like
which is also
compassion. Yeah, like I know I've heard people bring up the fact that in human evolutionary history, at a certain point in time, even today in some cultures, you can get like kicked out of the tribe, so to speak, like completely cut off. So I have compassion for shame protecting from what you're saying is what could be an ultimate rejection of like you are cut off from resources, that which you need to stay alive. And I feel like extremely privileged to live in a type of culture or like bubble where I can really push those edges of transmuting and alchemizing shame. Like, would you say that everyone has that opportunity, or some people are really using shame to survive, to avoid rejection that would like cut off life force? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it depends on where you are in the world. Like, I know that there are women in Pakistan and Afghanistan who are like taking off their hijabs and are being burned with acid.
Yeah.
Like, that's a reality in the world that we live in. And there are parts of us that track that and are like, it's not safe for me to wear my booty shorts. And that might be real for you. And like safety also has different levels. Like, are you safe from like being murdered?
Yeah.
To, are you safe from being catcalled?
Yeah.
To, are you safe from someone grabbing your ass on the bus?
Yep.
And honestly, with the world that we're in right now, sometimes it wouldn't matter what you were wearing for that. So
Definitely.
those senses of safety is usually what shame ends up kind of trying to protect us from, is the, if you are a sexual being in this world, you will be hurt. But something to offer to this part, for those of us who are in more kind of like westernized cultures, in more kind of like progressive cultures, is that we also have this powerful piece of like the agency of our choice. To be able to choose, like, how am I going to navigate this culture? And does it mean I need to move into more communities that are more accepting and like all welcoming of what we have called sinful and shameful in the past? Are we wanting to like do this more in our house and we feel more comfortable wearing quote unquote modest clothing outside? Like right now I am dressed in something very silky and bougie that in like the streets of New York, like I could wear a pair of what my partner calls stripper heels because he wants a pair. They're awesome. Like he wants one for himself. He's like drag magic. It's amazing.
Yes.
But like, like I could wear this with my booty shorts that are like all like velvety and walk out. But I live in rural Guatemala where like the women are very covered. Like their necklines are like up to their collarbone. And like usually their shoulders are covered and their skirts go down to their ankles. And this is kind of like the culture that's around here. So for me personally, I would not feel comfortable wearing this out within this culture. But that doesn't mean that I feel ashamed of wanting to, or ashamed of my body or my sexuality for wanting to explore that. It just doesn't make deep sense.
And like that point that you're hitting on, would you call that like self-awareness or something like that? This sense of like, I have this desire, I'm going to completely own it, and I have the agency to fulfill this desire in a way that is in alignment with my safety, my community, resonance, harmony with my microcosm that I'm in.
Yeah, definitely. My words for that would be sovereignty.
Sovereignty.
Like I'm in my like sovereign, and like I use kind of like royal kind of like stories. Like I'm in my sovereign queen.
Yeah.
I'm in my like sovereign power to make choices that impact my life and allow for more of my erotic life force to be present in my life in whatever form it's playing. Whether it's me having really juicy, tantric, kinky, magical, sexy times with my partner.
Yes.
Or it's me flirting. Or it's me like pouring my energy into my offerings as a coach. Or it's me getting really creative on the dance floor.
Yes.
And that doesn't necessarily need to be like sexy, quote unquote, in the way that we've been taught that sexy is, but it can be like that pouring of that aliveness into the experience. And I believe that at least everyone who's listening to this has the space to tap deeper into the erotic life current and has the access in their lives and in their humanness to do so.
Exactly. I love that distinction about how we can pour our aliveness, as you said, into things that are not strictly sexual, although that space is fun. It can be creative. It can be platonic with friends. It can pour into every facet of life. And that's something that I've really had to learn. Like, oh, I can play with this energy outside of like classic sex, you know, and just really stretching my
classic
mind. Like
sex.
you got it.
Classic.
Classic inside the box. Yep. I'm like, can I do that? Will I be censored? I don't know. Like,
who knows? I don't know. It depends on what platform you're using. Maybe. I have no idea. But going kind of like beyond censorship.
Yeah.
Is so often we censor or siphon our power. So often, because of this not enough story, we are afraid of showing up in our full power and our full radiance and our full magnificence as a human. With all that our heart cares about, whether it's like the ittiest, bittiest, babyest puppies, and you're just like, I want to save all of them. Or you're caring about like the hunger of the world, or these bigger political issues around like land and women and life. Mm-hmm. Like your heart and all that it cares about is beautiful and magnificent. Yet so often we spend like, oh gosh, like so much of our time hiding ourselves from life, from what we deeply want, from what's empowering and powerful to us, because we are afraid of the ultimate rejection. We are afraid that if we show up in our full power and our full magnificence, if we feel sexy about ourselves and excited about being alive and like we can take on the entire world, the world will say, nope. And then what?
Exist in void space. Oh no, I can't, couldn't possibly let me shrink. So shrinking.
Yeah. And this also holds all of our deepest desires. Like so many of the women that I work with have desires to fall in love and experience partnership. And this is really important to them. And I think this is important for a lot of people. And there's this kind of like paradox happening in our culture of people like it just being plastered in every movie, on billboards, everywhere, like be in relationship, then you'll be happy. Be in relationship, then you'll be valuable. Be in relationship, then you'll be important. And that part's bullshit. The kind of like pressurized, like you're not okay if you're single. That doesn't help anyone.
Yeah.
However, there's also a genuine desire to be in partnership, to be playful, to be erotic, to be sexy, to be romantic with other people. And those desires are like deeply valid and valuable. It speaks to what we want to share in life, what we want to experience. And it's really beautiful. So like most of the people that I come to, it's kind of like being in that space of accepting, yes, I want to be in partnership. And there's this fear that if I show up in my fullest, if I show up as my like sexiest and most shameless beingness, I still won't be enough for a relationship. So it's safer to not do all the work to try to be that much me, because I'm still going to be rejected. So we keep in the same patterns.
It's like
same
a why
stories.
Why bother type of, it's like a why bother, it won't work out anyway. Why bother, which reinforces like just same old type of deal.
But if like you're living that, you're probably also sick of the same old anyway. So the invitation in this work of like engaging in our sexy and shameless life is to really claim our desires and say, these are important to me. Like everything that I want, even the ones that are like impossible. And I mean that in the realest sense. Like I cannot have a harem of werewolves. I guess it would technically be reverse harem, but like that is literally impossible.
I'm like, is it though? Like I don't know.
Maybe not completely. And maybe there's different ways for me to engage with that through like role play or like, oh my gosh, I'm imagining these like elaborate like movie set like role play character deep dive, like
and
like
it's
live action role play.
And it's like all they've ever wanted was to be like a werewolf in a harem. So it's like meeting at this like synthesis of like we're getting it. We both thought it was impossible. Like get it. And
chances are on this planet, in this world, they're not literally going to be able to turn into a wolf. It's just not possible. But owning that desire completely, that there is a part of me that thinks that would be the sexiest reality possible, that is powerful, because it also creates space for me to accept the desires that I have for like long-term partnership. The desires that like my personal being has is to be in like polyamorous loverships with like deep community, and to have a place in like wild nature where we can really explore the edges of all of our experiences of sexuality, of power, of connectivity, of how can we be human together in this world that has a lot of different trauma patterns around being human together, to create what we deeply want in our lives. And there's a part of me that was scared to own that and was like, I'm okay living in my little cabin here in Guatemala. It's nice. And I have the view. And like, this is like what everyone's dreamed of. But it wasn't necessarily my dream. I like desire community. And that's kind of like my next step in the next couple of months, is saying, okay, I need to live in community. A bunch of my people are in Costa Rica. Okay, let's go. And start creating the space in my life that I need to be able to do that.
Exactly.
Those decisions, like your choice is one of the most powerful pieces of your experience of being alive that you have. Your choice to say yes to what you deeply want and to move towards it is what makes the relationships you've been wanting to experience, the work you've been wanting to do in the world to be of service to like your life and what you need to survive and thrive, but also to the world and what it's needing from the medicine that you showed up here with.
Exactly.
To like gosh, like wanting to dance more. But being like, oh no, I won't look good. And like, I have no time. And like all these things. It's like, can you make that powerful choice to say yes to yourself and to your aliveness while you're here?
Exactly. And like, thank you so much for sharing, by the way. You're like dropping so many gems. It's like real time processing, real time alchemizing stories into stories that are more and more empowering. Do you find that when you introduce the work to clients, does it take pretty quickly? Or I'm asking, like, how long do you usually stay holding space for other people's like unworthiness narrative or like the old story? And then how long is it in writing new stories?
So it depends on the client. It depends on the person. It also really depends on how much trauma they've experienced around.
Gotcha.
And just to like track that, because not most of, but like there's a varying degree of trauma, and especially sexual trauma, that my clients have experienced. So it varies because there's a lot of different layers to kind of nurture and support. Because the first piece we want to bring in to any of these practices is compassion for ourselves. It makes deep sense with your family history, with all of the experiences that you've had, with the way that the world is, and with what you've been taught to believe about yourself, that you are sitting exactly where you are, being a part of this or listening to this. Like all of those decisions make sense based on either the collective or personal, and usually it's a mixture of decisions and experiences and impacts. And having compassion for ourselves, where we've been taught to beat ourselves up for feeling shame or anger or guilt or frustration or not being where we want to be or are quote unquote supposed to be. That's like the first really kind of deep steps, to have deep compassion for ourselves. And then to be able to have deep compassion, like for these parts of us that are coming up with these like painful ways of interacting with us. Another great example beyond kind of like our shame monsters is our inner critic. Oh, you could have done that better. I don't like how you did your makeup.
I'm only saying this because I care. It's like, can you care less? Can you care less?
Yes. But also to go underneath and to be like, what are you actually caring about? It probably isn't about my makeup or how my hair looks, or that I'm wearing this thing versus this thing, or that the graphic design that I did for my business has this shade of red versus this shade of red. What are you actually caring about? And when you get underneath the layers and have compassion for that part, remembering that they learned from this culture, they learned from your parents, they learned from the history of what's been happening. And you have compassion for this part, and you're like, why are you saying this? and you can get underneath, often to the places where there's a lot of care. It's like, I don't want you to be rejected. I want you to show up with all of your light and your magnificence. I want you to be the best that you can be, and like really live this life. And I'm just excited by that. And the only way I've been taught to get you there is by being an asshole. Because in our culture, we use blame and shame and judgment and guilt to kind of say what's good and bad and right and wrong, and to try to get us collectively towards our goals.
And then for me, the compassion comes in, looking at it like, oh, if you're trying to get to your goal and these are all the tools that you're aware of, I understand you're using them. It's a sense of, I completely understand, and I'm just introducing some alternate tools, but like, I'm still with the goal. We're all in agreement. We want to go here. Okay, cool. And then it's just like, like introducing the new tools. It's like the Buckminster Fuller, make a new thingy that makes the old thing obsolete. So it's like, okay, we're all here. We're all good. We're all in agreement. And then, very gentle. But yeah, I completely understand. These are the tools that have been around for how long? Okay.
And that piece that you're mentioning of like, we're all here together, like all of the pieces of you want to be on the same team. But when we're taught these different layers of againstness, like this one part of us that's like, you're fat and ugly. That was one of mine for a very, very long time. It's just saying, you're fat and you're ugly. You need to lose weight. You need to do these things. You need to go here. You shouldn't be eating that. Like, oh gosh, like everything around moving, wearing clothes, connecting with other humans. Did I mention eating? Eating was a huge thing. Like I was thinking about food all the fucking time. But that like the shame story in that, when I got underneath her, because like she seemed like she was against me, like always putting me down, always making me feel awful. But when I realized that underneath, she was like, your dreams. And at that time, it was like, your dreams are being like an amazing singer and a movie star. And all of them look like this. And you don't look like that. But if we really want this goal, then we have to look like this, or else we can't get it. And like, the only way I've been taught to get you there is through this. And then talking to that part and be like, oh yeah, I totally also still, well, not now, but like at the time, want to be a singer. Like I want that too. That's important to me. How can we work together to feel good about ourselves? Because we're not going to get to this goal if I just feel worthless and shitty. And then that shame, that specific voice became this signal that like, oh, I really care about my dreams right now. How can I align myself with my dreams right now? And then that kind of piece that would show up as this critic, this like monstrous, painful part of me to have conversations with, I was able to then alchemize that part into a signal. Kind of like when I was feeling shame, it's like, oh, I feel shame. Oh, what are you talking about? What's going on? What are you caring about?
I love
I'm on
that.
your team.
That,
what's
like,
happening?
How can I align with my dreams right now? How can I align with my dreams? Yeah, turning that into signal. Because like, yeah, what are emotions beyond wanting to signal us in a way in service to our dreams and our highest, juiciest alignment? And yeah, instead of spiraling into whatever story they have, re-signal, refocus. How can I align with my dreams right now? I'm going to record myself saying that and like loop it as I'm sleeping or something. I love that so much. It's so empowering.
There you go.
Yeah.
And as we kind of deepen into this conversation on like sex and sexuality with this, this gives us a deeper space to be with the parts of us that have been taught culturally to be ashamed around sex and sexuality and what we really desire. Like, what do you really desire when it comes to erotic sexual relationships? And this is something that I want everyone to be asking themselves. Because oftentimes we'll paint a picture of what we desire kind of based on this mix mash between like movie stars and like sex scenes in movies versus pornography versus kind of an internal sense of what do I want to experience, then add in like romance novels, and we have this like entire painting and picture. But then we also have any of our past experiences of leaning into relationship and how they match or don't match that.
Mm-hmm.
And we both create very unrealistic kind of stories of what we're supposed to sexually desire, what we're supposed to romantically desire, and how that's supposed to show up. And also we then cut ourselves completely off and be like, I deserve none of that. And to lean into this space of getting in touch with that genuine desire. Like, how do you want to be touched? How do you want to communicate with your partner when you're about to engage in more erotic connection?
Mm-hmm.
And one of the most amazing tools that I've received for that is having a conversation before you get to the sexy pieces.
Yeah.
Or maybe before you get to the really sexy pieces. Of communicating your fears, your desires, and your boundaries.
Ooh. I love all of this so much.
So that you can, from the beginning, kind of like be with that sense of sovereignty in yourself, be like, these are my boundaries. Many of the women that I've spoken to in my intensives as clients and kind of my curiosity calls have had these experiences, and I have too, of like kind of like leaning into sexual experiences with someone, usually with men, and the consent feeling fuzzy. The like, I don't know if I really wanted that part, or like I was just kind of okay, but I didn't feel good about it. Like,
yeah, like
it was like unsatisfying.
It wasn't a
bad.
Fuck yes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But not feeling like we can communicate that in the moment because we're already in. And so much of like our voice has been taken from us in sex and sexuality. But to set it up from the beginning, to say, before we go and get down and dirty, I want to talk hot with you about what my desires are, where my boundaries are, and if I have any fears.
Yep.
So that you're opening up this space of being able to get like super juicy and hot with the desires and to see if they align with the other person. Because like, if you want spankings or you want to be touched gently just the entire time, and they're like, I just kind of want to stick a body part in your body part, or they're like, I want to like spank you and throw you around and get really intense, and you're like, I want something totally different, then you can know that before you're going in. And you can create more of an alignment of like what you're really wanting.
Totally.
You can also speak fears and get into that vulnerable space, because our most juicy experiences of our sexiness and sexuality comes from a vulnerability. Like, sex is vulnerable. We are opening up the most naked, sensitive parts of ourselves to play, which is also why it's one of the most pleasurable, juicy, exciting, magical experiences when we're in alignment and deep care with the other person.
Yes.
And it doesn't necessarily mean like we are committed to each other till death do us part, but that there's deep care for the humanity in each other. And a love for that humanity, even if you're not ready to say I love you yet. But a deep care and love for the humanity in each other. To go into that deeper space of inviting like the sacredness that is your aliveness. Simply from being alive, being connected with the sacredness of my aliveness.
Exactly. And to be in that space of awe and the miracle of we are both alive right now in this moment. And you hit on a point that I want to like deepen, in that if you make that decision, if you make those micro decisions of like, I want spanked, I don't want spanked, I want this kind of touch, feeling free to change your mind at any time, keeping up with the communication with yourself, with your partner. Maybe it's, I said I want to be touched gently. Okay, touch a little harder. Okay, like to set the intention and to feel free to continually update what's coming up for me, what's going on throughout the whole experience, sexual or otherwise, or at least that's what I've been experimenting with in my partnership. And I've enjoyed it, and I've seen how my relating to vulnerability has shifted, seeing vulnerability in the old story as a nemesis, seeing it now in the new story as an invitation or like a portal to more love, more connection, more of what I genuinely desire, and surrendering to that and trust, basically. And it's been like a very beautiful experience. But yeah, just to anyone listening, knowing that you can real time update whatever it is that you're wanting, and to never feel stuck in, oh, I decided this, now I'm here forever. Like, that's not how I see it.
Not even remotely. And a fun way that you can introduce that communication, if a part of you is like, I'm afraid of ruining the mood.
Yeah,
this is often what
so
gets
real.
said.
Yep.
And also, it can change the energy. We're like, we're touching, we're thinking. It's like, oh my gosh, you're like digging into my collarbone, my collarbone.
And then it's like, oh no, my shame monster's back. I'm back. And it's like, no, no, we're good.
Yep,
we're good.
for everyone. Because it's like, oh no, I hurt them, and now I'm bad at sex, and now I don't know how. And then you're sitting there like, no, come back. So I want to acknowledge that there can be disconnections in sex. And it's not all like Hollywood movie, like we are just one and merging and just together and everything. And there's mood lighting and you can barely see my ass and like, it's great. That real sex isn't like that.
Yeah.
Like real sex has farts. Real sex has funny noises.
Yeah, chest fart. You know chest farts, so it's like
yes.
It's like ha ha.
Yes. Yeah, and like different noises and sounds and feeling. Like sometimes it takes a whole minute to shift positions in a way that feels actually really good. And I'm just thinking of some of my past sexual adventures. And I'm like, oh yeah, there were awkward, hilarious moments of like falling off the bed and like, things like that happen.
Totally.
And to be in that space of care and fluidity with each other, where if like you're wanting to create more fluidity, a really simple kind of like color system that you can use. Now there's two, especially for any of my kinksters out there, you will know green, yellow, red.
Okay. With
kind of like green being like, everything's good, I'm a go. Yellow being like, hey, like we're kind of reaching an edge of a boundary here. Can you check in with me? Especially because like in kinky spaces, you're kind of in kind of like different roles or different like personalities or playfulness. So there's kind of like a care around kind of like, how do we definitely easily reach back to safety? And red is like, okay, stop whatever we're doing. I need you to talk with me. I need to come out of whatever roles I've been playing with. Like I need to like be human with you beyond what stories and play we were connecting with. Another system of colors that's really fun to play with is blue, pink, purple. Blue is, this is boring. I don't really like this anymore. It's like, I'm blue. It's kind of like sadness from oh gosh, what's that movie called Inside Out that has all the emotions? Sadness. I'm blue. This is good.
It's like meh.
Yeah. Pink is, ooh, I kind of like that. I think I want more of that. That's kind of turning me on. I'm enjoying this.
Yes.
And then purple is, fuck yeah, give me more. I want this, all of this, more, please. And that can be like an easy, like a word way to kind of connect with your partner and also help them to get into those pinks and purples if you're finding a lot of like blue moments.
Yep.
Which is also okay in our learning of each other. Another piece that we're kind of taught is that, especially as women, is that like our partners will just understand our bodies and understand what we want and our desires and be able to touch us perfectly, and it'll just be perfect. And they need to know how to do it. I don't want to direct them. I just want to receive. And those receptive moments can happen and will happen. And there needs to be a body of experience created with each other to be able to be like, oh yes, I like this. Oh yes, this is what I want. Ooh, that's actually an ouchie spot. For me and my partner right now, it's actually my collarbones that are probably one of the most sensitive parts of my body for some reason. So anytime they put pressure on here, like collarbone is now like just like a consistent word in our erotic connection. As they're still learning where to put their hands in their body while we're having sex, instead of right here where they like used kind of like pressure with other partners before. It's been totally fine. And my collarbone's like, nope, please don't. Oh my God, all I am is pain now. There's no pleasure, it's just pain. To be able to really lean into each other and create the experiences that we want. Which is also why working with your shame monsters around speaking what you want in sexuality and being in that deeper connection with your desires, from those like deep rooted ones of like, I really want partnership, to I want to have this kind of business with this kind of lifestyle, and to own it.
Yes.
Own it.
Own it. Oh, yes. Thank you so much. I really enjoy the color system, the like red, yellow, green. I'm familiar with just in like how that's used across different fields, you know, but what was it?
Yep.
Blue, pink, and purple. First of all, those are just like my favorite colors. And I like how it corresponds. It's like a pleasure scale, you know, like not like a, this is right, this is wrong, but no, it's all juicy, good. Like, where do we want to be? And if you want to be in blue, not judging it, or like if you are in blue, not judging it, but for me, the highest ideal in all of this is we are sharing our humanity right now. We're being vulnerable, and we can fill this space with so much bliss and love. And being in that, like, that's just what that is, you know, despite the uncomfortable parts that come up, it's all in service to that intention, or whatever intention you're inviting people to set before it even gets into the sexier spots.
Yeah. And like, for those who are wanting to engage in more like sacred sexuality practices, you don't need to go study Tantra for 1,000. Is what I was going to say. But like, you don't have to go and like deep dive into that to get started. Like, sacredness is connecting with the deep importance of what's here now. That's one way of understanding what something being sacred is, or someone being sacred is. Like, there's deep importance, and therefore this reverence coming in. And you can create that in any kind of erotic experiences, whether you're connecting with like ancient tantric breath work, or you're doing energy circulation or not. And I teach more of that in my courses if you're interested. But to connect in with like the importance and the sacredness of this human being alive, as we've spoken in this podcast, and I'm being alive, and to be in reverence and honor of that as we lean in together and connect with each other.
Yes. Awesome. Being mindful of time, I see we have about 10 minutes left. I just want to ask one or two final questions. Well, one last question, and then an invitation for you to share like what workshops you have coming up and how people can further engage with you. But basically, I'm wanting to ask, if someone is listening to this and they're like, okay, I'm ready to rewrite my story, I'm ready to really own my desires, how do I know what I desire? Like, what would you tell someone who's ready to drop deeper into their own understanding of what they desire, and how to discern kind of what is a story or an implant or someone else's projection, and then what's their actual real desire coming from their divinity, from their heart, their soul, what have you?
Start by writing them all down. All of them. And like, maybe give yourself like 5 different categories to play with. Maybe you play with relationship, work, lifestyle, what's another one? Social, and something else, maybe purpose. We'll just throw that in. But you can put in like 5 categories that feel important to you. And then write out all the desires that you have around them, and see which ones, like after you're done kind of writing that, go through each one and see what really kind of like sits in your heart space, and you get actually excited about the idea of living that out. Like when you imagine yourself living that out, you actually want it, versus you imagine living it out and you're like, that'd be okay.
It's like you're saying, see what would be like a purple to you instead of like a bluish, like that, bringing that scale back in.
You could even kind of like circle them with like a pink, blue, and a purple kind of like color to be like, oh yeah, these ones I'm like super into. Like for me, at one point in time in my life, I really wanted to be an author. That was what I was going to do. I was just going to write erotica for everyone. That was what I was into. There was a part of me that was leaning into that desire, and then realized it's like, oh my God, I'm going to spend absolutely all of my time, potentially by myself, probably in front of a computer screen with all of these characters and stories just in my head. I was like, I cannot actually do that. I do not want to do that. I still might write erotic novels for you all, but like, it's not something I want to do full time. And so it was recognizing, well, what do I want to do? What do I love doing? I love being in conversation with people. And that started to kind of like shift me into like deeper embodying my coaching. So it was something I was doing, it was something I was good at, but it wasn't something that I was like, this is the thing. I was like, no, author is the thing, coaching, go over here. But then when I actually like really opened myself into that world, it was like, this is the thing. Oh my God, I love this. I can actually help people have better sex and love their bodies and like be in love with their lives. Fuck yes, I'm doing this. So also lean into like your past experiences to see what you really enjoy and what flavors of connection and aliveness you really enjoy. So that the kind of like decision making or like the teasing apart of what's the social story that other standards and authorities have given me, and what's my genuine story. And you're going to be the only one who's going to know that when you feel it, and you'll feel it.
Totally. Yay. Thank you so much. And where can people find more of your work if they're like ready to start working with you right now? What's going on in your world?
Yes. So actually, funny enough, tomorrow, so I'm not sure when this adventure will come up into the world to be experienced by people, but it would be March 10th.
Yes.
2021.
Yes.
I'm starting a free masterclass that happens over 3 days. You meet with me for an hour each day. It's called Sexy and Shameless. It's going to be delicious.
Yes.
And you can find that at www.eroticembodied.com.
Yeah.
And you can come kind of experience and grasp more of my coaching style, get like some really deep, high value content in like, how do you experience your sexiness and really drop the shame. This one's specifically about alchemizing shame.
Sweet.
And so that's going to be a really delicious experience. If you're listening to this later, still go to eroticembodied.com because there'll be some sort of magic there for you.
Yes.
And I do run 3-month intensives and immersions as my group program, Erotic Embodied Immersion. That is something where it's like you're serious about investing in your relationships for life. You're serious about engaging in like feeling that life force be a part of your experience of being alive.
Yes.
For your experience of life. And you're like, I'm in. That's an option. And if you're more interested in one-on-one work, I only work in 6-month containers because that allows for like the juiciest kind of like raw, real, deeply powerful transformations in the realms of sexuality, work, purpose, and also in attracting relationships. If you're specifically like, I want to attract my soulmate, and a part of me feels weird saying that, and a part of me wants it, and I'm just like, into that, then that is something that I offer in my 6-month container. So you can find more information about at
Yay! There you have it, folks. There's so much to tune into, whether the free super helpful training that starts tomorrow or a 6-month container. Again, thank you so much for being here beyond words. I am extremely inspired by you. Thank you for your courage and your bravery and your consistency. May anyone hearing this continue to do the work to know what their deepest desires are, to process and transmute feelings of shame and unworthiness, and just fully get off on whatever that desire might be, knowing that that is useful for the individual being and also society as a whole. If there's any last words for this little adventure that you would want to share, go for it. Hopefully this is the first of many conversations as we continue to co-create a cool new world that we want to live in together.
Definitely. Yes. Thank you so much for having me here. And if you loves are just interested in following what I'm doing, you can also follow me on Insta at Erotic Embodied as well.
Yeah,
So yeah, let's go live a sexy and shameless life, because we're only in this adventure suit in this lifetime once. And it's a magnificent unknown. Like, we don't know how long we're going to be here. So we might as well live it with the most juice and power, and in relationship with people who are juicy and powerful too.
Exactly. Thank you so much. I hope you have an awesome rest of your day, enjoying lake life and all of that.
Yes. Right. And anyone listening, I send you so much love wherever you are, whatever you're experiencing in your humanness. I just send you so much love.
Yes.
And to you too, Kayla.
hey, thank you for being down for this interview. That's like what I'm owning as a desire, you know, to really build a platform where people can come on and share what their work is, where they've come from, where they want to go. And yes, just thank you for being in resonance with that.
Oh my goodness, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Da, da, da. Da, da, da.
All right, well, I'm gonna get off here and enroll in your training for tomorrow.
Amazing. Yes, do it.
Give me more. All right, take care. Thank you so much.
Bye, love.
Peace out.